Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Martin. I'm the Executive Director here at Hourglass, and I'd like to welcome you to our first Friday Forum today with the County Commissioners. Today, we're joined by Commissioners Ray D'Agostino, who just became the chairman of the Commissioners this week. Congratulations, Ray. And Josh Parsons, who's the vice chairman. The forum today will start with questions that were developed by the Hourglass Board of Directors. Those questions were shared with the commissioners in advance and span topics ranging from the new health council to the new prison, American Rescue Plan funds, county staffing, and more. I'll be asking slightly abridged versions of those questions today, but I'll put the full version of the question on the screen. Since there's so much we could talk about, we asked the commissioners to limit their responses to about 2 minutes per question. After that portion of the forum, we'll have ample time for questions from the audience. If you're joining us virtually through the live stream, please drop those questions into the chat. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'd like to thank our first Friday Forum sponsor, Rogers & Associates, and also Millersville University and the Ware Center for hosting us today. They really went the extra mile to help us get everything set up this morning with the snow. And thank you so much to the commissioners for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. All right, should we get started?
Yeah.
As we jump into questions, I'd like to acknowledge that Commissioner Layman is not joining us today, as today is his last day as a county commissioner. So I'd like to just start off by, if you have any words for your colleague on his last day or hopes for his replacement, as that's being considered right now by the Court of Common Pleas.
Well, we told him he could come with us, but he was walking out the door. So. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Well, I certainly had some comments. I've known Commissioner Layman for quite a while, being someone in municipal government and in the community at large, and I've always appreciated the ability to be able to talk to him. And he was a good listener and was passionate about the community. So I've always appreciated that. And when I became a commissioner, he had knowledge and experience that he was able to share. And you could just tell his passion for our community by the things that he would bring up and discuss. We didn't always agree, of course. No one ever does, but we were able to get past that at the end of the day and move forward. So I really wish him well in his future endeavors.
I'd just say we'll really miss Craig on the board. He was a really important member of the board for many, many years. Multiple boards, brought a passion for the issues, brought his willingness to work, and he had a financial background. He had been a budget analyst, which was really helpful to the board. I'd say we were very aligned on the big things, 90, probably 70%, 97, 98% of the things we voted on, we were all aligned on. Sometimes we had disagreements, but we did that and still had a good relationship. And so it was in the two boards that I've been on, they were boards that were very effective and worked well together. So we'll miss him. I understand that, there's a season for everything, so he's ready to move on to other things. And we'll look forward to hopefully having another partner that we can work with in an effective way.
Okay, great. As we transition into a new year, I'd love to hear from both of you. What keeps you up at night, and what's your proudest accomplishment from 2021?
Guess I'll go first. First, let me say it's good to be here. Always appreciate the opportunity to speak to folks in our community. When it comes, I will say this. I will start off by saying that Lancastrians, by and large, are very hardy and self-sufficient and caring people. And I don't think there is anything that we cannot and have not been able to do together to be able to either achieve something that we set our sights on or come together and get through a challenging crisis. So with that being said, there are times when there are things that happen that are beyond the capacity of an individual or families or municipalities. And so what I worry about is those times, especially when they first happen or you think there's a threat out there, because I'm concerned about that 550,000 people, the welfare and the safety of the 550,000 Lancastrians. At the end of the day, I know that we're going to come together and we're going to get over whatever challenge there is, but in the beginning, you're a little anxious, I'll say, about that. I will say that in the last couple years, though, and this is an unfortunate thing, my background in 30 years has been in municipal government and in nonprofit and private sector, and in Lancaster County. And I haven't seen a time like I have in the last couple of years where the overreach by federal and state administrations has been so vast, quite frankly, and non-collaborative. Say what you will about the last couple of years, but there are ways that those administrations could have been more effective in working with those of us at the local level. And there were families, businesses hurt, the community hurt overall. We're coming out of this, but now we're dealing with massive inflation and other issues that, quite frankly, I didn't think I'd see in my time. So that's unfortunate. And then my final thing is, along with that, in the last few years, I really lament not having a unbiased, honest, non-political, large print media organization. What we have now is not that. What we have, unfortunately, is, and I do look at it to see what's going on, at least with their printing, but it's unfortunate. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of mischaracterization, a lack of information, and bias and politics in that paper. So I really lament that, because the community needs to have good, solid information that is unbiased and non-political. And I have had this conversation with that paper, and be glad to point out some examples. There are many. So those are the things that I could see over the last couple of years of my term.
I'll start with, well, first of all, thank you to Hourglass for having this again. We always look forward to it, and good to see many friends in the room. And we appreciate having the dialogue. And I always say, I know you have a program, you want to move it along fast, but I'm happy to have a dialogue if people have questions, as we're going. I'll do accomplishments first, and the caveat is, we talk about accomplishments, but they're really team accomplishments. We have a great team of almost 2,000 county employees, many other elected officials, and we're very proud about what they've accomplished in the last year, and really over the last 2 years with the pandemic. But also there's a larger team, which is Lancaster County, which has been incredibly collaborative and effective. So, any accomplishments we talk about, I think you have to look at in the context of those larger teams, and just appreciate what they're doing. So I think, what I'm proud of is we continue to do the basics right, what you expect from us, what taxpayers expect from us in Lancaster County, what we're known for, which is, one of the biggest issues when I talk to regular working folks out there is their concern about property taxes. Strangely, this issue doesn't come up a lot in forums like this or with the media, but that's what people care about. So they're very pleased that we've been able to hold the line on property taxes for almost a decade. For 9 years, county government has not raised property taxes. We're pleased about that and happy, because when you talk to senior citizens who are on a fixed income, they're worried about losing their home. So we've been very, I think, frugal in that respect. It's almost unprecedented to go that long. You could say, well, you kept taxes low, but were you responsible in other ways? And I would say, yes, we were. We've paid down, county government has paid down almost or over $100 million in debt. When I came into office, our cash reserves, which is kind of like a family savings account, was around $3 million. Now it's over $50 million. That's not even including any of the federal money that we'll talk about later. Our bond rating has gone up multiple times. We have we, like all municipalities, have a state-required, state-mandated pension system. You never hear about ours because it's basically 100% funded. We're on track to replace or repair all of our county-owned bridges. We've done infrastructure work in our prison, and now we're making progress on a project that has been talked about for decades, we did infrastructure work on our county courthouse, and now we're making progress on a project which is talked about for decades, which is the prison project. So I'm proud of that. We continue to be national leaders in farmland preservation and also making more progress from the county perspective in also saving forest land in the counties, working with the Conservancy on that. So, I think we're providing a level of responsibility not often seen in other levels of government. Those things aren't always talked about a lot, but I think that's what I continue to be proud about. Like Ray, I have concerns. I think we as a community can deal with almost anything that comes up, and as Hourglass knows very well, because you spend a lot of time thinking about problems and how to solve them. But certainly the change during the pandemic from what we've seen any time in our country, which was founded on the principle that all power is invested in you, the people, and that you delegate it to elected officials for a certain amount of time for certain things. That paradigm by some has shifted, and I see that as very concerning. That does keep me up at night. We had a governor exercise more power than any governor in history, certainly more power than any governor since the Civil War, with very little oversight until some of the constitutional amendments were passed. Very little ability by the legislature to rein him in, use of executive power, pretending that the law is things that it is not. When you open up the law on health emergencies, the power that they pretended to have in there does not exist. And the sort of forgetting by large segments of the population how America works, which is in the state, if you want to pass a law, the House and the Senate have to pass it and the governor has to agree. Same in the federal system with the president. And instead we have incredible use of executive power that has never been considered before to our system of checks and balances. And so if you don't have any checks and balances, what do you have left? Well, you have to have transparency and you have to have sunshine. And we've seen very little ability or desire by the media. Certainly the print media is in a better position than many others to provide that. Very little interest because of the partisan nature of it in providing that, certainly with respect to Governor Wolf. And I think that worries me that is causing great damage.
Appreciate those responses. As we move forward, we'll ask just one commissioner respond to the following questions in the interest of time. So let's switch gears and talk about the Health Council. In October, you voted to create a Health Advisory Council. What qualifications will you be seeking from members of that council, and how will you ensure they have the autonomy and resources needed to work in the best interest of our community?
So I'll take that one. As you know, I put forward the proposal to have a Health Advisory Council. And I think it's important to understand what it is and why it came about. So very early on in the beginnings of the COVID-19 crisis, we brought together a group of folks to help advise the county commissioners. Folks from each of our 4 major health systems, some of our legislators, emergency management, long-term care facilities, and different other organizations. And we also hired someone, engaged a consultant, who had expertise and experience in public health or medical emergencies. And so it worked well, quite frankly. We were able to work well and help the community get through that time period. So taking a page from that, what we're looking for in the Health Advisory Council is a council that advises the county commissioners. The county commissioners are vested with the responsibility to oversee the health, welfare, and safety, of course, of the community, just like supervisors and townships and borough council members and city council, whatnot, do for their communities. And so we need, I thought, a way to have that feedback and information. On matters of emergency planning, so one of the first things that this advisory council is going to be doing is working with our public health and emergency medical preparedness coordinator, Violet DiStefano, is to develop a plan. I think all over the country, every community was caught off guard, quite frankly, with what we witnessed and dealt with over the last couple of years. So we want to have that in place. So what I'm looking for is to have representation from each of the 4 major health systems in the county, and have other people who have maybe some different experience or expertise in different areas of medicine or health, but also others in the community that represent maybe other aspects or parts of our community. It could be municipalities, it could be long-term care facilities, businesses, because we all work better when we work collaboratively and work together and be able to problem solve or think ahead. The other thing the council will be doing is working on identifying existing resources that are already there and helping existing coalitions be able to bring out information for existing coalitions. So, for instance, I know Commissioner Parsons serves on Joining Forces. It deals with drug abuse and drug overdoses. There are a host of other coalitions. It's one thing we do very well here in Lancaster County is we collaborate and we come together. And so what can this health council do in terms of being able to bring forth that information so that we have that information? And what part, because we already play part in many of these things in different ways. So that's what I'm looking forward to having on the health council. Hopefully we'll get that done this month. I think we're looking at appointing people this month.
As a follow-up question, what conditions would have to exist for you to support a county health department?
Well, I think I've been pretty clear on this. Under the existing 1951 and 1955 laws that we have for local health, public health administration and Disease and Prevention Control Act, they believe we have to be rewritten. Any body that, and I mean body as in not a person, but an organization that we would work with, like any other department in the county, quite frankly, would have to have oversight by the elected officials. We answer to you, the people. And having, and believe me, I could spend a lot of time talking about this. Like, so I've delved into this and talked to people all over the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Having an unaccountable, unelected organization that basically can dictate what you can and cannot do, both personally, for your families or your own health, it is just absolutely a no-go for me. And then there's the cost factor. There's a lack of information and basically collaboration with the State Department of Health that needs to be solved before I would even consider a public health department. And not only that, but I haven't been in the community for quite a while. As I already said, there's a lot of things happening in this community that we're already working together on. I haven't really heard of something that cannot be tackled through a process by which coming together without having a department that is completely unaccountable. So at this point in time, I can't see it happening under the existing laws.
Let's switch gears and talk about the prison. As the county works towards building a new prison, what is your guiding philosophy for that facility? And can we expect any new programs or approaches to criminal justice?
Well, this is an exciting topic. The prison's been, as you all know, been talked about for decades. The Castle facility was built in, I think, 1851 or some 1850s, and then subsequently added on to over the years. The most recent Tower Park being built in the late 80s, early 90s. Very challenging physical plan, as we've discussed before, for the staff, for the inmates. And so, this has been talked about a long time. The issue that always has to be solved first is the location. And so we've made, as you all probably know, significant progress on this, and I give Ray and the working group a lot of credit. I'm chair of the prison board, but Ray has led the working group on this. And so to find a piece of property that is basically bordered on 3 sides by river, the 4th side by a cemetery. You also have to be close to the city because you have to be close to the courthouse. And to have all the pieces come together like that and not really have a lot of neighbors. We have some neighbors across the river who, don't love it, but they've been very constructive. They have said that, we don't love this, but we want to work with you to make sure it doesn't impact our property. So to have all those things, when you talk about a project of this size and this magnitude, and to have, just very, I would say, very supportive community and not much pushback is pretty incredible. And we've approached this like we want a win-win. We want a win for those in the area. We want a win for the staff, for the inmates, for the community. That's the reason we've tried to put the county in a great financial position so that we can responsibly do a large project like this. And so the first piece is to secure the land, and we're almost there. We haven't signed the final deal yet, but we've gone through a lot of hurdles, and we expect to secure the land. And then after that is going to be the planning, because basically all the planning is driven by the parcel, and you don't want to do really planning before you know that you have a parcel of land. And so the community will be involved in that. You all can be involved in that if you want. The guiding philosophy, I think, for me is we want to have the most professional organization in the Commonwealth, and that's what we've wanted since I've been involved in this, and I've been involved in the criminal justice system since I was a prosecutor back in 2007. So we want a professional organization that gets results. We don't want people coming into the criminal justice system and then coming back out and coming in again. We want to cut down on recidivism. That's been the warden's goal. And we've implemented a lot of new programs. We did prison stat. We had one of the most dangerous prisons in the Commonwealth, which we really have changed. Assaults way down. There was a drug problem within the prison. We've basically ended that through a variety of measures. We had a serious suicide problem. You can never stop all prison suicides, but we've done a great job on that. So I think, yes, there's going to be programs. The space is going to allow for new programs, different kinds of things. But are there any definitive plans? No, not yet, because you had to get the land first, and then all that planning can be done. But I think it's exciting. It's exciting for the community. I think done right, it can be a win-win for everyone, and it can be a win for the city too, because you're talking about a whole city block where the old prison is that can potentially be redeveloped into something really great.
Warden Stubberger has said that her target capacity for the new prison is currently 1,250 beds, which is an increase from the current prison. However, in 2019, the average Lancaster County daily jail population was 790, and incarceration numbers have been trending down across the state. So what's the rationale for so many beds, and what would you like to see in the final structure?
We're going to have to study that and see, there's people who do this professionally who will look out, into the future and see what that should be. I would just offer a couple points. When I was a prosecutor, I then ran for clerk of courts, in part because the logistics of our criminal court system were not working well for anyone, defendants, police, victims. And at that time, there was about 1,300 people in the prison. And we now reduce that. Today we're probably at 730. So I don't know of very many places that reduce their inmate population by almost half in a safe way, with the community, where you have the support of the DA's office. And the way we did that wasn't just letting people out. It was speeding up the process. So 70% of people are awaiting some court action. A lot of them are awaiting a parole probation hearing. Some of them are awaiting trial. And so we sped up the process through a lot of wrestling with the courts and others, and through a lot of innovative thinking. And we solved that problem. And there was also, some alternative sentencing things in there, but a lot of it was just speeding up the process and making it more efficient. When I got involved, Chester County, about 1% of their cases was over a year old, their criminal cases. York County was 3%, Lancaster County was 21%. It was terrible. So this whole system has been improved. That being said, you can't guarantee that's always going to be the case in the future, and you don't know. So you don't want to have happened what happened in our current facility, which is essentially they ran out of space and built up. You want to build a larger core, probably, that can then be added onto in the future if you need to. And some people, especially prison reform advocates who talk to us, say they don't want a big prison because they're afraid we're just going to fill it up. I don't think that will happen. I don't think that happens. But you do want to build, if you build too small a facility, then you end up not having the space for programs, or you end up having the problems that we've had in the past here. So I think there's probably a sweet spot there that's going to have to be studied, but it's going to be bigger than the current capacity, likely. So it's not going to be a capacity of 700, because you wouldn't want to do that. You want to have some extra capacity. But again, these are just my thoughts right now. That's going to have to be studied. And maybe some of you have thoughts, or maybe Hourglass wants to do a white paper on that. I'm looking at Art, man.
See some nods. Let's move on to the American Rescue Plan funds. Lancaster County has received roughly $106 million in relief funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. A small percentage of those funds have been allocated, and you recently shared the county is awaiting federal guidance on how the remaining money can be spent. While you await guidance, do you expect to use any funds on currently approved uses, or to solicit any public input on how those funds are spent?
I'll take that one. So we received about half of those funds, $53 million so far, and we expect the other $53 million sometime in the very near future. And breaking news, federal final guidance has come out yesterday afternoon. It's in a binder yay big. It's 437 pages. But that's not the end of the story. Having been involved with the CARES Act funds last year and this year, we know that the U.S. Treasury Department, which is tasked with overseeing the utilization of the CARES Act funds, which ended last year, and now the ARPA funds, they continually update guidance. And that's important because there are a lot of nuances. Even though it says that, for instance, you can spend money on, I don't know, water or sewer project or broadband, there's fine print. And that fine print keeps changing. And so we got to keep on top of that. So we're now going through the process of reading the final guidance. And I expect that what will happen is what happened with the CARES Act, because this is what's been happening with ARPA. The Treasury will put out FAQs, frequently asked questions, of which there's a lot of those nuanced nuggets, very important of information. And the reason it's important is if you are found not to have spent the money in accordance with the regs, including that guidance, the county or whoever the municipalities, every state, county, and municipality has received some funds, it could be owed back. So that's one thing. I think it's important to understand what we did with the CARES Act funds, because I think it sets up what we're looking at with the ARPA. With the CARES Act funds, we were different than most other counties. We put close to 80% of that $95 million directly into the community. We did not absorb it as a county. Many other counties absorbed it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about money that was put out to businesses, for instance, to keep them in survival mode, as you saw the shutdowns from the state. That was about half, a little more than half of the funds that we received from CARES went to businesses. Because why? Because small businesses are the backbone of our economy, right? Lives and livelihoods. We put money out working with our hospital, our healthcare systems here in the county to have testing, to have a vaccination center, what have you. So taking care of the health and welfare and safety of the community. And then we looked at our own continuity of operations. We of course, have to continue to have government operations going. Not just ours, we helped out municipalities. Municipalities didn't necessarily receive CARES Act funds. And fire companies, EMSs, libraries. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And by the way, in every one of those cases, we reached out and we had a group of folks that we were talking to at all times. What are the needs? Nonprofits, businesses, municipalities. The list goes on we were working with. And of course, we had public input as well. We even helped out our convention center. As you know, the convention center had to shut down, and we helped them as well. I mention that because there are other counties who are looking to use ARPA in the way we used CARES. They need to catch up because they didn't do what we did. So I think it's important to understand that. Now, looking forward, I think we have to be careful. We have an opportunity with these, a massive amount of money. This is federal debt that's going to have to be paid back at some point, and that's our kids and grandkids and maybe great-grandkids at this point. We have to be very careful that we do not use that in a way that then triggers the need for ongoing financial support from government agencies. That would be the wrong thing to do. This is a one-time infusion of money. We need it for, I think, one-time projects that will help us achieve our goals with infrastructure particularly, both in terms of maybe buildings and plants, but also technology, upgrading our technology so we can serve people better. Ultimately, that's our responsibility as county government, is to serve the people of Lancaster County, all 550,000 people, and do so in a mostly cost-effective and efficient way. And not to create new programs, but to do the things we do it well, and maybe do it a little bit better with these funds. And the last thing I'll say is that, and we have a working group that we did with the CARES Act funds to make sure that whatever we do is in accordance with the guidance, because of what I said before. But we also hear from the public constantly. We hold at least 2 meetings a week. I don't know of any other government, quite frankly, level of government or government agency that has that many meetings. We're constantly getting feedback, and we're constantly available. Having said that, I do foresee having a process, now we have final guidance, of asking the community, okay, with some guidance from the commissioners in terms of what I had said about the one-time infusion of this kind of capital, what can we do to really advance ourselves going into the future? And having a process at which we can get those ideas and put some of those funds out in the community. But I do think we need to take a look at this fund. We just talked about a prison project, right? That's really expensive. How do we do that in a way that maybe we can use some of these funds for and some other projects that will help the county as a whole?
Thanks, Ray. Let's talk about county staffing. A number of county government offices are experiencing significant staffing shortages. You've recently taken steps to raise wages or create incentive packages for some employees. How else is the county working to fill these positions, and what can we expect here in 2022 as the county looks to remain competitive in attracting qualified workers?
Well, thank you for the question, and I can tell that it's basically drawn from some articles in the newspaper, and I would say, the problem with that is the context is missing, which is the context is, as many of you know who own businesses here, every single business in the county and beyond, and every single county in the Commonwealth, we talk to our colleagues, is dealing with these issues. We are in some ways the strangest economy that any of us have seen. And why is that? Well, there's basically spiraling inflation caused by the massive federal spending. There's also many different overlapping programs, some of which have served to disincentivize work. And then you have some people who have left the workforce for other reasons. Some, the last 2 years have been tough, and they were, maybe they were going to stay for another 5 years, but they were eligible for retirement. That's certainly true in the county, and they decide to leave. So we're dealing with those challenges just like every business, and I talk to business owners and my colleagues and people in the municipalities almost every day who are dealing with these significant issues. So the county does a lot of different things, we have a lot of different departments, and some have been impacted more than others. Obviously, the prison, probably the most challenging job you could have during this pandemic. Very, very challenging in the best of times. It was very difficult. They did a great job. Staff did a great job. So, we've had to look at those department by department, and a lot of this has been going on continuously. But the other piece is we have a lot of different bargaining units, unions, and each one has to be negotiated. So for the prison, we were in negotiation with them for a significant amount of time. We had a 5-year contract with the prison employees. The county actually opened up early. That's pretty unprecedented that you would open up a contract early and adjust the wages, and we adjusted them significantly. We also provided incentive packages for some different departments where they were below a certain amount in staffing. So I would say, the overall sort of takeaway is the county's in the same position that every other business is in right now. Some departments, depending on the department, worse than others. So some of the things we did the incentive packages. We've done, I think, a better job of advertising, getting the word out about what the packages actually are. We do a cost of living increase every year, just like, businesses and other government entities. This year was, the highest that certainly I remember ever doing. It was ranging from 4.25% to 5.25%, depending on your employee evaluation. Some of the bargaining units, it may be even more than that. So, but all of that takes time, all of that takes negotiation, and there's many different pieces to it. So I think that context was missing from some of that discussion in the community. And, we're going to continue to do that. We continue to talk to our unions. We continue to talk to our elected department heads to see, what we can do to stay flexible and to be an appealing place to work. I think we have a great retention rate across the county workforce with people staying, but this is a challenging work environment where people have a lot of options, and we understand that. We want to be an attractive place to work.
Thank you. Let's talk about affordable housing. According to data from the Lancaster County Planning Department, many county residents are spending more than 30% of their income on housing expenditures and are considered cost-burdened. Lancaster City recently allocated $5 million of its rescue plan funds to affordable housing. What do you see as the county's role in creating more affordable housing, and what strategies could the county employ to help with housing affordability in our community?
Well, I'll try to keep my comments just a couple of minutes. I think most people know that I've been deeply involved in this issue, and I can tell you this, that it requires a multi-pronged approach. There's no magic elixir or silver bullet, as they say, and this isn't just Lancaster County or Lancaster City. It's all over the country, and I can tell you that over the last 30 or years or more, this has been an issue. No community. I remember talking to Randy Patterson. As you know, Randy was a former executive director of the Lancaster County Housing and Redevelopment Authorities, was at the city. He would travel all over the country, I as well, going to conferences, and this was always an issue. And there's reasons for that, and I'll get into that. Look, what is the county doing? The county receives millions of dollars every year and has local county funds that combined equal millions of dollars that are provided for affordable housing. A lot of that goes through the Lancaster County Housing and Redevelopment Authorities, as you might imagine. But that also goes to other organizations. I led LHOP, and we received some of those funds. When I was at LHOP, for instance, we created a private investment fund. We did unique, different things, working with the private sector to try to tackle some of these issues. The other thing is the County Planning Commission, in cooperation with organizations like the former LHOP, now tenfold, did some research and legwork to put together publications that provide municipalities and other organizations, and even higher levels of government, quite frankly, with ideas on how to tackle some of these issues, both from a land use perspective, but also from a regulatory perspective, which, of course, land use is a part of regulatory, but hopefully it won't surprise you to know that over 30% of the cost of housing is because of regulations. Housing is one of the most, if not the most regulated thing in this country, even more so than water or the air we breathe. Every single level of government has a regulation regarding housing, with different perspectives. Over a third of the amount of money we spend on housing is thanks to government regulations. We need to right-size them, because once they're in place, they never change. They just keep going up, right, being added to. That can't continue. So that's another approach we need to take. And we need to be advocates for that, quite frankly, at the local, county, and the private sector level. The other thing I will say is that we need to take a different approach, because I'll go back to what I said before. This has been a problem. It's a problem over the country. Hasn't gotten any better necessarily after millions and millions of dollars and other things have been put into place. Why? Because we tend to look at it from a supply side as opposed to a demand side. There are two sides of a ledger, right? Everybody tries to look at the supply side, even the questions about, well, what are you going to do about affordable housing? Are you going to create more? Are you going to put more money into it? After trillions of dollars over these years, we haven't solved the problem. That's because we have a broken system. Permit me to, you may have heard of this parable where a man or a woman, a person comes up to a river and sees people floating down the river. 1, 2, saves them, pulls them out. And then eventually more come down and more come down. He's pulling them out and he gets more people involved. The next thing you know, they got a rescue squad, right? They got buildings set up. They got all this stuff to set up all these people coming down the river. And one day somebody goes upstream of the river and realizes the reason that people are in the river in the first place, almost drowning, is because the bridge is broken and people are slipping and falling into the river. And then they realize they need to fix that problem. Problem solved. Now that's an oversimplification. But the fact of the matter is the regulations that we have don't give people a bounce up and eventually to go. It's crazy. Yet at LHOP, when I was there, we spent $5,000 to have someone move out of an apartment into their own home and be able to be prosperous. $5,000 freed up a unit as opposed to creating a new one for $200,000. So when someone is in one of those affordable units or gets a voucher, what we need to do is we need to work with those individuals. The government agencies need to work with, when they provide the funding, to work with these agencies to help people be able to leave those places, free them up, and be able to go on to be able to take on a place in market rate housing. And beyond that, we have thousands of good paying jobs. And we have people who are unemployed. The other side of the ledger is the demand side, which means that we need to help people be able to get into the workforce, be employed to the point where they can afford market rate housing. Our workforce development system needs to be able to help people be able to afford this type of housing. If not, we're never going to be able to solve this problem, because we're just going to keep dumping money into more and more housing to the point where, what, federal or state government takeover of housing? Because we're never going to be able to build enough, because we're not actually looking at the real problem. So I think we need to do all these things at the same time. Don't get me wrong, we do need affordable housing. We do need, there's people who are just starting out. There are people who have disabilities. Yes, we do need affordable housing. But just think about the number that we need and make sure it's right-sized and make sure that we're working together to solve the problems so that we can help people live their best lives.
Thanks, Ray. Excuse me. Building on that conversation, a recent analysis from the Lancaster County Planning Department shows that Lancaster is not building at the density outlined in Places 2040, which is the county's comprehensive plan. which can risk farmland and can lead to sprawl. So what are you doing to encourage municipalities to build at higher density and to implement Places 2040?
So I'm assuming everybody knows that land use is in Pennsylvania the purview of local government. So we have 60 municipalities and 6 in Lancaster County, 2,700 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and each of them are in charge of land use. Most that counties can do and are tasked with doing is to provide advice and guidance. We have a comprehensive plan, and local municipalities are supposed to be generally consistent with the county comprehensive plan. But by the way, you can't find a municipality not to be generally consistent because there's no teeth there. There's nothing that can be done about it. But one thing that we do here in Lancaster County, as we've said before, is we do work together very well. And our planning department does a really good job and has been, quite frankly, since the passage of Places 2040, working with the municipalities on a regional level to create new regional comprehensive plans or land use policies that are in keeping with Places 2040. Places 2040 was unprecedented in terms of the way it was put together and the public outreach. By and large, we can really say this is what Lancaster County wants. So now the task is, with the county planning department working with the local municipalities to try to achieve and try to adjust the policies at the local level with the local elected leaders. They're in charge, they make the decisions, but working together to do that. And I can tell you that I've been hearing great things. For instance, I hear that the southern end, most of the municipalities down there are working together to create a new comprehensive plan, and then out of that will come new land use policies. So it's very encouraging. The other thing that we can do and have been doing is providing some funding. For instance, transportation funding under the Transportation Improvement Program that the NPO, the Transportation Coordinating Committee, has a funding program for those that have smart growth policies in place to be able to tap into some transportation funding to help actually with growth in those areas. So that's another example of how we're able to try to work with the municipalities to do the things that are in the comprehensive plan of the county.
I'm just going to ask one more question, and then we're going to kick it to audience questions. So get your questions ready, and if you're on the live stream, we'll check those out too. Lancaster County has scaled up its efforts to improve local water quality, which will ultimately help meet state goals for reducing pollution flowing to the Chesapeake Bay. In your view, what is the role of the county in contributing to solutions and progress on clean water? And how can you support the community partners that are leading this initiative?
I'll try to be brief since we want to get to your questions, which is the most important part. But you know, the county has a role. We're the conveners of the Clean Water Partners. I don't want to, we're not the major partner. There are many partners in that and many different groups doing good work. But they asked us to be the conveners of that, and I think that's the role we play in a lot of these issues that touch on things across the county, like joining forces or other issues. So the good news is, we're very blessed with the amount of individuals and groups who are working on this problem. So you've got, lots of groups. You've got the Conservation District. You've got the Farmland Trust is doing water stuff. You've got the Conservancy, which is trying to preserve forest land to help our waters. You have the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. You have, you name it. I'm gonna forget a bunch. So I won't try to name them all. I think and now the other good news is there's significant funding coming in, partly because the Clean Water Partners have showed that they're effective and that we can tackle this on a county level and solve some of the state problems by doing it. State and national problems by doing it ourselves locally together, and we can help farmers rather than come down with a heavy hand. We can help them get into compliance. We can do that in a collaborative way, and there's more and more funding becoming available for this. I think the ARPA, even the original guidance did allow for use of funds for clean water purposes. I'm guessing that's in the final guidance that just came out, literally just came out, but I don't know that for sure. So if that's the case, I think there will be a role for ARPA money for that too. The challenge is going to be getting all those groups, and I know they're already working on it, so they have an action plan, but getting all those groups to basically agree what is the biggest thing that we can do together to make a large impact. So, some people say it's repairing buffers. Some people say it's removing legacy sediment. And we have a lot of innovative things going on. There's the Little Conestoga project that many of you probably are aware of, which is potentially a very innovative model project. The county committed funds to that to show that you can basically take these old mill streams and turn it into a healthy stream, again, that helps to clean water. So there's a lot of innovative things going on. I think the challenge is having all those groups mesh and decide on what is the biggest issue or set of priorities, and they have a set of priorities that we can then apply those funds to and have them used in the most effective way.
Okay, great. Well, we have time for some audience questions. I'll start with the people in the room, and then I'll check the live stream. Does anyone want to start with a question? Michelle has a microphone. It just helps the people in the live stream to hear. Does anyone want to kick us off? Jerry?
Sir.
Yep. And if you just want to say your name into the microphone and ask your question.
Jerry Eckert. Thanks for the presentation. It provided a
Thank
great
you.
deal of clarity and more understanding about the complexity of your jobs. Not as important, but I just wanted to go back to the comment about the media. Other than, and this is not to be combative, just seeking clarity, other than the editorial page, what is the issue with the Lancaster newspaper?
You want to have a shot at that? I can certainly chime in.
Well, I mean, dealing with the media is part of our job. It's become abundantly clear certainly since the last election and during the pandemic that, it's not just the newspaper, but there's a lot of partisanship. I mean, I guess that's the nature of the media today. But, we could sit down with you. There's instances of that almost every day. The issue is sometimes you have factually correct things, but you have things that are not contextually correct. And I used to sort of, fight with them over this, and now, we just accept it and move on. But, I think anybody who's objective will agree that it's pretty partisan, and I don't think that it doesn't serve the community. I understand that. That's the nature of media today, but it's not. Given that folks like you, basically it would be nice to have a media source that works to be objective about things going on in the community so that people can be on the same page. So let's take the staffing thing, for instance. Every single business, every single county, every single municipality is dealing with the staffing issue. Yet we see a series of articles pointing out how bad the county is on staffing. It was absolutely contextually incorrect. And, why was that? Well, I would argue that it's for partisan reasons. But there's things like that all the time. Again, that it is what it is. That's part of our job. But for forums like this that then draw questions from those articles, I find that people are often misinformed about things in the community, and that is unhelpful.
I'll just jump in with a quick question from some of our virtual viewers. We have a question from Sam Meekum. Would there be any benefit now for Lancaster to become a second-class county, as by population we would be eligible for that? And I know a decision was made some years ago to stay third class.
Do you want to start?
So we are looking at that. We had a presentation by our solicitor, and I think all of us, the three of us at the time, we were inclined to go to 2A. There wasn't didn't seem to be anything that would be detrimental. Back, I guess, several years ago when it was first brought up, there was potentially loss of a lot of money because of the way that the code was written, but that's been dealt with now. It does give a little more flexibility to us if we do this. I know we are looking at making sure that before we make the final decision that there's not something we overlooked. So we're having our solicitors asking department heads, other officials to take a look at it. But at this point in time, we don't see anything that would be a negative. At some point, I assume that we're going to be forced into it, so it's better to sort of go and do it on your own before you get forced into it and in a way that you don't like. So, Commissioner?
Yeah, so I think for the average person, average citizen, it's not going to make a difference either way, whether the county is classified as 3 or 2A. There are some differences in the county code. I think it's appropriate for us to look carefully and see whether that's going to create any kind of problems or impacts. When you go over 500,000 citizens, you're basically supposed to be 2A. So to me, that argues that, and that was delayed for 10 years for certain reasons. The convention code, the laws that govern the convention center were not in the 2A code. There was an issue with the 911 fees. So those have been corrected. So the question is, if we're supposed to be 2A generally, is there any real reason for us not to? There are some changes, and we want to make sure that we're careful about that and deliberate. But so, I'm interested in any feedback on that. I think people like Sam who are, interested in the details of this, it matters, but to average people out there, probably doesn't matter a whole lot either way how we're classified.
We can take a final question. Is there someone in the room who wants to ask one? Yep, in the back here.
I guess this is partly John McGran, partly a question, partly a comment. The Health Council. I guess, is there a timeline for when that's going to come together? And and I say that I think about this from the standpoint of some of the local officials. My wife serves on a local school board. And during the COVID crisis, there was a level. There was some guidance and leadership from the state level. There was some that was sort of disparaged at the local level, desire to have more local control. But what happened in the COVID crisis is every local body had to become their own set of health experts. They had to, and I don't think that's very efficient. I think those local officials deserve more guidance so that they can make decisions without having to each one, designate somebody to be their particular expert and form their own opinion. And there was a void, there was a gap between the state level guidance and these very, very, very local people who needed more support than they were getting. So is this actually going to come together, and is there interest among the community in serving on this?
I actually have to correct that. That's not necessarily accurate. So we, with our CARES Act funds, worked with every school district through the IU to have a contract put in place so that with LGH, so that every school district had basically consultation on a regular basis on issues relative to COVID. What you saw, quite frankly, was state constantly changing its mind or putting this out and then changing it or doing that. That's what's really irritating local officials. At one point, I can tell you that the state did something, made a change, and caught the schools off guard. And we were able to actually work with the state to say, hey, whoa, time out here. We actually have every school district working with a healthcare system to deal with these issues. We don't need you to put this into place. And they relented. And I believe that collaboration is still going on. So I want to make sure everybody understands that we stepped into the breach at the county, whether it was long-term nursing homes situation or the school districts. We stepped into that breach that the state left behind.
Well, one, John, thank you for the question. And John comes to some of our meetings sometimes, and I always appreciate the dialogue. And we don't always agree on things, but I appreciate that he's willing to have a dialogue. And, I think to answer your question, yes, the council, there are applications coming in, there is interest, and I think, what Ray had said when he put this forward was that, early in this year that we would look to have that up and running. I would maybe disagree with you a little on some pieces of your statement. The school boards are the authority for, how to run their schools, at least they're supposed to be. And, we provided the resources, both what Ray talked about, advice, but also we provided significant resources during the pandemic with regard to funds and PPE and things they needed so that they could come back. Most did. And the problem was that you had, for example, in March of 2020, they all went home. They were planning all the way through the summer to come back with our support, and then you have at the last minute, before they could come back in the fall, a change sort of on a whim from the Department of Education and the governor. So even counties that had a full health department couldn't counteract that. They could not take any different. They could take greater protective measures. They could not take any lesser protective measures. So I would argue even counties that had maybe what you would prefer having here weren't able to be particularly effective in that regard. I think the Health Council will be able to will formalize what we've done throughout the pandemic and done better than any other community. Maybe some will take issue with that, but you didn't see even communities with full health departments, you didn't see the kind of collaboration we had here. The vaccination center, there were no counties with health departments that executed. That was the best in the Commonwealth. We had people from Chester County coming over here. I don't take credit for it. It was because of great partners. We were one of those partners. So we were able to do things that other counties weren't able to do. I think we'll be able to continue to do that and formalize it with the Health Council. If it doesn't, work, then we'll continue to look at it. I know you.
Well, I guess just one thing. I think what I would say is the opportunity here is for a body that has sort of the clear support of the commissioners to deliver some public messaging that might have helped overcome some of the conflict in our community between parents and teachers, and I'm thinking about it from and school boards and school administrators. I think that was the frustrating thing is that there could have, it feels like there could have been more messaging from the county level, which would carry weight in our community that might have helped pull us together a little bit more as a community. And I think this body could do that.
Some of that messaging is likely things there were not agreement on. For instance, there was significant disagreement about, I thought that kids should be in school. I thought that there was very little threat to kids, and it turns out there was very little threat to kids. Even the New York Times came out, I think, this week or last week with saying that, basically we were wrong. Kids should have been in school. They're paying a great price for that. So I think some of the conflict is just nature of the disagreements. We set up the vaccination center, but I feel strongly that people have a right as free American citizens to decide whether to be vaccinated or not. So some of that conflict is people who want to implement their will or force their will on others, and is the nature of disagreement. So, the Health Council is not going to maybe do things because we just simply don't agree on everything that you would want them to say. I think that there are things that they can help advise on, just as we've gotten that advice from the four systems, the four health systems that are in the county throughout the pandemic. That can be in a more formal way.
Well, I appreciate the robust discussion. We're actually at time for today. Thank you so much to our commissioners for being with us. We really appreciate your time and your service to the community. A video recording of today's panel will be made available on our website and YouTube channel. Feel free to share that with community members who would benefit from this conversation. Our next First Friday Forum will be Friday, February 4th. That will be with Lancaster City Mayor Deneen Sirachi. And to receive invitations to all of our First Friday events, we welcome you to become an Hourglass member. You can do that on our website at hourglasslancaster.org. So I hope you can all join us, and until then, have a great weekend and happy reading your American Rescue Plan binders.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
As always, we appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.